Thanks for coming. Today we're going to be looking at some different big paintings because it's just nice to look at paintings when they're big and beautiful on the wall, as well as think about some simple concepts that maybe we can employ when we're creating our own drawings here today as well. And we're going to start off by looking at Edward Hopper. He's an American painter, turn of the 20th century. He lived to around 1970, I believe, probably 1910 to 1970 or so. But the main thing we're going to be thinking about when we're looking at Edward Hopper's works are simply how he connects his darks. We can think a little bit about his subject matter and stuff like that a little bit later. But the first thing we want to look at is look at these large shapes. Look at how much he leaves out. And that's something when we're looking at Hopper that we can think about and employ in our own works as well. Using these large shapes when not to put in too much detail. Sometimes we can be seduced into wanting to create more and more detail in our works, but sometimes we can actually show more with less. And this is a pretty common theme in a lot of different design as well. It's a concept called closure, which I'll show you some examples of in a second as well. So we look at this image, just look at these big blinds, just rectangles, just simple rectangles. No need to go in there and do every single little piece of wood or anything. He treats these as large blocks of color which can be blocked in very easily. Here we can see in this close-up how the figure here is delineated. These two values, light and dark and middle tone, are very simply blocked in, but the drawing has to be very precise beforehand and worked out before you get into this stage. But you can look at this face here, just a simple shape, that simple shape for underneath the neck in that value shape. It's quite large and it even goes to the back. Even goes to the back there, then you've got like this hair shape here. But these again are large shapes. Look at these trees, look at how much is left out. We're thinking about leaving out stuff when we're looking at Hopper. And those just large value shapes. Of course, in design, this concept is called closure, as I said, and it's just the phenomenon. Your eye can make up the missing information. This is employed in painting all the time, and from Velázquez to Ed Hopper, all these people, we can go through and we can see evidence of closure, and it just means that you don't necessarily always have to spell everything out and draw every single line. You can leave some areas open. And this also with figure drawing, is going to pertain to line weight. Areas that get more light, will have a lighter line weight, whereas a darker line weight in certain areas as well. Here we can see it with this blue here. In this painting, it's just one solid block of blue. And look at these little yellow marks. Just these different values of yellow in these windows. Simple rectangles. Very, vertical, horizontal, stressing the vertical and horizontal of the picture plane as well, kind of flattening that space, but that gives us tension from from this house to this house, playing with what is in front of what. And here we see the detail of the two figures. Just that one simple dark color with just a couple little highlights for the dress. In this painting, we can also see the same sort of approach. Look at how much is left out of all these green areas. Just an indication here, an indication here. Even this, whatever you call this, that goes over this shop space, this fabric, is really just broke down into these simple shapes. So it's really important to work these things out in the drawing beforehand, before you get into the painting, most likely. How these, look at this shadows coming through in the space, giving ideas of indications of form. But once again, vertical, horizontal, flat picture plane. Even this little long blue rectangle at the top. Long blue rectangle, almost the sky almost feels like it's coming forward. The sky is almost like in front of the building. Take a look closer up. See, I guess that one doesn't work, but we can look at this one as well. And he was also famous for, Hopper was also famous for depicting people kind of in everyday life sort of situations, and it feels like you're looking in the window. Of course, Night Hacks at the Diner is, a famous painting of looking in a window. So Hopper's paintings also have this feeling of voyeurism to them as well, but you're really just looking at people in their everyday lives. So here we see a man reading the newspaper and a woman playing the piano, and they're kind of in their own worlds, in their own daily lives, in their homes. And this is an intentional nod to a painter that really influenced Edward Hopper, which was Courbet. And this is The Sleepwalker by Courbet. And when we're looking at Courbet, we're also thinking about a realist painter, somebody who is focused on capturing the everyday moments of life and these sorts of things. In this regard, this is kind of an odd painting by Courbet because it's of a sleepwalker, which is kind of supernatural, and I feel like it's a nice bridge between these two different ways of looking at the world, which is kind of the Ed Hopper Courbet approach to the world, where we're looking at people doing their normal things. We can think of Van Gogh's potato eaters as another example of this, where people are just in their everyday environments and these sorts of things. But during the time, there's a lot of different artists that are exploring other ideas that are more mystical and kind of more magical as well. And Courbet's The Sleepwalker would be one of those paintings. And we can see in this close-up, though, even there's kind of a similar approach of leaving things out. We don't really see the indication of all this hair coming around. There's a lot left out in this painting, and that's also something to really pay attention to in your drawings. When you look at these eyes, it's not like you're exactly drawing the bottom lid and you're drawing the top lid as much as possible. You're really leaving a lot of stuff out as well. So we can get into, I thought it would be fun to look at some other paintings of sleepwalkers, and this one is by John Millet, who's a pre-Raphaelite English painter. And when we're thinking about the pre-Raphaelites, we can learn a little bit about them as well really quickly. And they were painters who essentially want to they're kind of in opposition almost to this approach of focusing on the banal and the minutiae of everyday life. And the pre-Raphaelites are more interested in myth and legend and these sorts of things and ideas that are much more mystical. To contrast that, we can also see this painter by Whistler. He also did this painter of what's called the White Girl. This painting is called the White Girl. And in this painting, we can basically see how an American painter, Whistler kind of had a really odd story actually, because he was born in the United States, but he kind of lived all over the world. I think he spent most of his life in the United Kingdom. His dad was like making the railway in France or something like that. But regardless, we're starting to see these ideas of the subconscious filter into art as well. So when we're looking at these paintings, we're looking at an approach that is, with Hopper, it's kind of the everyday people sitting in very normal Eastern Connecticut style homes, East Coast Connecticut style homes, and these sorts of things. But these same artists are starting to kind of play with these ideas of the subconscious, and these White Girl paintings are kind of interesting examples of that, where those things break. So here we see a pre-Raphaelite version. And Whistler as well would be in Courbet, of course, as well. And Whistler would have, also considered himself to be like a realist painter in many regards as well. Of course, his most famous painting is Whistler's Mother, which you've probably seen Mr. Bean destroy. If you haven't watched that, watch the video of Mr. Bean destroying Whistler's mother. This is actually a Czech painter, Maximilian Perner, and he was part of the Vienna secessionist movement that would have been started by Gustav Klimt. And the Vienna secessionists were a group of artists in this region of the world, Central Europe, essentially, that were also interested in these bigger, grander questions of art, and they kind of wanted to get away from this nationalistic view of art and look towards myth and legend and bring these sorts of things into their art as well. They also believed in kind of like a unifying art. So you can think of Art Nouveau as being kind of connected to the Vienna Secessionists as well, as Art Nouveau would try to create like an all-encompassing form of art that brings in design elements, it brings in architecture elements, it brings up elements of poetry, of painting, of all these things together. And in this Perner painting, we also see the same thing, which is a sleepwalking woman, and a lot of his paintings are really pretty cool because they're also dealing with these ideas. She's like near a cliff or something like that, but they're also a precursor to what would come next, which is surrealism in the 1920s and afterwards. But we can kind of see the seeds are being planted with these types of painters playing with these sorts of ideas. Here we have Odilon Redon. And the last painting we want to take a look at is that of Henry Rousseau. This is the Sleeping Gypsy. And Rousseau is kind of an interesting painter as well because he also would come in from a more naive angle. He was considered a self-taught artist. In many ways, he was a tax collector until he was in his 40s. And then by his late 40s, he would actually be painting full-time. But Rousseau is interesting to look at because while all this is going on and there's all these battles over the pre-Raphaelites who even create like a certain ethos and a manifesto and all these sorts of things, there's Henry Rousseau who is working on his own, creating his own paintings, which many would consider to be naive, but he's also dealing with similar themes and similar ideas. And here we have a sleeping woman, once again, which we've seen in many paintings, as well as this element of danger present, which we also saw like in the Perner painting as well. And the idea of the subconscious, the idea of what's happening, is there a dream occurring? What is exactly happening in this painting? You can even see this approach to the face. Look at this beautiful selection of color here. Just this almost just begging to be surreal in so many ways already. But this is like 1870 or something, I think. 1880 maybe. So we're really quite before that, and it gives you an idea of the academy and people who have to follow all these rules, and then people making manifestos in order to break all these rules. And then we have somebody like Rousseau who comes along and kind of smashes everything just by focusing on very, very simple ideas and simple execution of paintings, which is also incredibly consistent. So that's all I've got. I know this is always a strange romp through many different types of painters, many different types of style, but I kind of throw out all this stuff hoping that some of it sticks, and hopefully some of these painters resonate with you as you start creating your own works tonight. Thanks.